The latest updates on where Baker Mayfield and Vita Vea stand with the Buccaneers, the biggest surprises in camp so far, how Tampa Bay's talented rookie class is faring in camp, and we've got joint practices with the Jets looming next week, along with the first preseason game. All that and more on this episode of Bucs Collective. Welcome to Bucs Collective, a show that has over 70 years of experience covering Buccaneers football. We've forgotten more Bucs football than some will ever know. And you know what? During the Josh Freeman, Mike Glennon, and Jameis Winston years, it's probably a good thing we've forgotten a lot of Bucs football because that wasn't too memorable to begin with. I'm Scott Reynolds from Pewter Report. Each week I'll be joined by Fox Sports' NFL reporter Greg Auman, covering the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and Tampa Bay Times longtime Bucs beat writer Rick Stroud. The Bucs Collective is brought to you by HMA and presented by Prize Picks, America's #1 sports app. Sign up for Prize Picks, and when you use promo code HMA, new users can play $5 and get $150 in bonus lineups if you win your first lineup. Gentlemen, training camp is underway. We just got wrapped up literally moments ago with some press conferences. We heard from Zach Robinson. We heard from Kenneth Gainwell, Payne Durham. There's a night practice tonight. A lot's happening with the start of training camp. But still, here we are a week into it. And the biggest news still looming, Baker Mayfield and Vita Vea, in terms of where things stand with those two players, their contracts, and the Buccaneers. Rick, let's start with you. Vita Vea, is he going to play this year for the Buccaneers? Are they going to trade him? What have you heard? What's the latest when it comes to talks between a guy that wants at least a pay raise, if not a contract extension?
Yeah, this one's not trending the right way, I think, to be honest with you. You know, just in the conversations that you have with his representatives and watching the body language, I don't think Vita has any intentions of playing under his current contract. Now, you know, I've been asking myself, isn't there a way out, right? You got to give the player a chance, you know, to have his way back. And maybe the solution is that you just bump him up a little bit this year. He's at $17-something million, get him in that 20-something range. Maybe he's a top 10 highest paid defensive tackle, and perhaps that could do it. But there doesn't seem to be really any inclination on either side, at least on the Bucs side, to do that. And I think at this point, you know, the longer this goes, it's not going to end well, maybe for the Bucs or for Vita. I mean, obviously the Bucs have the hammer. They can just not trade him, and eventually he's going to be losing $17 million at some point. They went ahead with the, you know, he's got the contract itis or the tweak in his back, whatever you want to call that. But this team is getting on a plane and headed up to New York on Monday. Yeah. I don't imagine Vita Vea is going to be with them. So, you know, now you're through the first preseason game. I'm not confident, and I don't think that the agent is confident. They seem to be at a real impasse here. And it might result in a trade as we get closer to the start of the season. I just don't have a great feeling about these two guys getting together, the team and Vita getting together.
Yeah, there's really no progress right now. I mean, the Bucs don't want to give him a contract, and Vea doesn't want to play under his current contract. So the impasse is right. And then now the question is, when and how do things come to a head? Right now, they kind of have that back injury to cover things, to explain for why he's not back to things. But I do think no matter the time here, that's one of those where you're going to have to figure out a way to either get him on the field, or then you raise the stakes by starting to fine him. I think they'll go to those things before they go to a trade. They don't want to trade him.
Yeah, in terms of this, because the Buccaneers don't want to trade him. He's such a vital member of this defense for Todd Bowles, and Jason and I drafted the guy. I think they would love for him to just play out the deal. It seems to me that if the team is entrenched in not looking to trade him, and Vita Vea doesn't want to play under this current deal, maybe the middle ground is we're going to give you a pay bump this year, and maybe even like a 1-year extension. Maybe if push comes to shove, that happens. I don't think Vita Vea wants that.
No.
But at the same time, he doesn't have a lot of cards to play. He's 31 years old. If he holds out this year, he's right back in the same boat next year at age 32, and that doesn't help his cause. And the other thing, too, is this year's Buccaneer team is exceptionally deep at defensive tackle, especially nose tackle. The guys here, these are the lower level guys. They've got Jason Jones, they've got Elijah Simmons, and that's not including DeMonte Capehart. That's not including a couple of the other players such as Ashawn Robinson and Raheem Nunez-Roches.
Yeah, I mean, you think about the depth of the team. None of those guys are Vita Vea is the problem. They're all complementary people that have size that can get in there and help out. Vita Vea, you're talking about a guy that played 700 snaps last year. So to lose him is to lose your most prominent, most on the field as often as possible defensive lineman. Collectively, you could put 2 or 3 guys into the position to take what he did. I don't think it would have the same effect, and I think the Bucs would be in a rough spot as a result.
Yeah, we just lost Rick there for a second. Yeah, Greg. I mean, when you look at this group of defensive linemen, and certainly we can't make a whole bunch of hay over just the first padded practice. We'll see him again later tonight. But when you look at what this defensive line has done over the 2 practices, the one in shells the other day, then the one in full pads, they're pretty dominant. I mean, there was not a lot of running room at all. Now, granted, this offensive line is missing Tristan Wirfs, but it still has Ben Bredesen. It still has Graham Barton, Cody Mauch, Luke Gedeke. It's got some heavy hitters up front. But this defensive line combined with the linebackers, it was just incredibly tough for them to find any running room. And you don't want to not play without Vita Vea. I'm not suggesting that the Bucs are better without Vita Vea. But if there's a time when you could get by in the first 6 games of the season, if Vita Vea truly wants to hold out and then return to action to accrue that year and then move on from the team in free agency next year, this roster is probably better equipped for that happening now than it ever has.
Right. I mean, I think they overstacked the defensive line. I don't think they were anticipating this. They lost Greg Gaines. Okay. They lost, think about losing Logan Hall from last year. That's 2 guys they lost. Replace them not only with Ashawn Robinson, not only with Raheem Nunez-Roches. You have a healthy Kalijah Kancey you add to that mix. You have DeMonte Capehart as a 5th-round draft pick. And then you have these young guys that are kind of the wild cards in this, in Elijah Simmons, who they picked up last year, and Jason Jones. Jason Jones is massive. I mean, he's bigger than Vea in terms of his size, his height. Just doesn't have the experience of playing in the NFL. So you have a couple of guys that essentially are projects that are bubble roster players. They would need one of those guys to step up and be ready to play at least at a rotational level. I don't know if they know what they have in those guys right now. I think the fact that they've kept Simmons and Jones and these other, I mean, honestly, they're younger guys, they're undrafted rookies that are in the mix too. It's just for them to knowingly take the core of this defensive front in Vita Vea and actively remove him from that defense, even if they got a defensive tackle in return, even if the team that took on Vita Vea gave them another nose back, a body that would help them now as opposed to a draft pick, it's still not something I think the Bucs would choose unless they felt that was the only option.
Yeah, I agree. When you look at Baker Mayfield, there really wasn't a whole bunch of news coming out. I think more of the news is the fact that it really appears to be a stalemate between Vita Vea and the team. But Baker Mayfield, we just heard literally moments ago in Zach Robinson's press conference, he has been all ball. This has not been a distraction, at least from Zach Robinson's standpoint. He's focused and locked in on the task at hand, and he had nothing but praise about Baker Mayfield and his ability to kind of compartmentalize this and focus on football.
Yeah, it's strange in that you have 2 situations right now. They're both 31. They're both in the final year of their contracts. Obviously, they both want new deals beyond this. But the posture, the way they're approaching this is completely different in that Baker is still very front-facing, still talking to the media, still at practice as if nothing has changed, had his family out at the family day. He's there, kind of the main attraction, one of the main attractions at the autograph session they had tonight before this night practice. And by comparison, Vita Vea isn't any of those things right now. I mean, he's an attendant at practice, but he's not doing anything. Whether or not the back is the reason for that, I guess remains to be seen. There's 90 guys out of a 91-man roster that are listed as autographing tonight at this fan session, and Vita's the one that isn't. It's probably easier. You don't know what fans are going to say to him right now, But I will say the biggest difference between those two right now is that Baker is very much carrying on like nothing has changed. And he kind of said that would be the case. Vita Vea, by comparison, again, is not there, is threatening to probably be there less than he is right now. He's the one that's probably the more contentious of the two and the harder to resolve as a result.
Yeah. Were you surprised with Baker's remarks? Because they were very pointed at the team.
Sure.
You could really sense and hear the disappointment in his voice, just the fact that this deal didn't get done. And the start of the season, that's usually the Bucs' typical MO.
Right. And it's worked well in similar situations in terms of guys that they want to get deals done. You have it done before the season starts, so it's not a distraction that way. I guess they're okay distracting from training camp, if you will. I think that's still, for them, an allowable time to conduct business, to work out contracts. Baker, to his credit, this is back, wherever it was, a full month ahead, made it clear he was imposing that deadline at the start of training camp. I don't know that the Bucs like deadlines being handed to them. I don't think that helps things, is trying to create an urgency, deadline spur action, but they're going to do things when they want to do things. So I think if anything, sometimes that works against the idea of two sides coming together if one of them is kind of forcing the other to the table when they don't want to be there.
Yeah, exactly. We had to call an audible there, Rick, but you're back, and we're grateful for it. Your thoughts on Baker Mayfield's very pointed comments about the team. We were all there at that press conference, and I've never really heard, especially a quarterback, lay into his own team the way he did. At the same time, though, there is a picture circulating the interwebs of he and Jason Light sharing a good chuckle and a handshake, and all things are groovy there. Now, he may not feel that way about Mike Greenberg, right? But I think he and Jason have that relationship. Is this a matter of Jason and Mike kind of playing good cop, bad cop with Baker a little bit here too, to maybe eventually help smooth this over? And of course, hopefully on the other side of this, when there's a winning season and a great season from Baker Mayfield and maybe, a 5 at the beginning of that check that the Blazers have to write for him.
Well, again, I mean, I think that they have the hammer, right? Because he's under contract. He said he's going to play. He's going to ball out. Baker always bets on himself. So from that standpoint, the team doesn't have to do anything. I think it's interesting because I think the Bucs are deathly afraid of Baker Mayfield becoming a Tua Tagovailoa that hamstrings their salary cap for years on end if they were to give him more than 2 years. And I understand why he wanted more than 2 years, because a franchise quarterback would normally get that. And with Baker, these things for the player, guys, it's personal, right? They're out there playing, they're laying pieces of their body all over the National Football League. For the team, it's business. It's the old North Dallas 40. If you're old enough to remember, when I say it's a game, you say it's a business. When you say it's a business, I say it's a game. And really, that's what it comes down to. And what's interesting is that Baker turned down, allegedly, reportedly, $50 million a year. And if they franchise him, which they absolutely will do if he has a good year, I'm convinced they will franchise him. It's even less than $50 million, right? And they could do it twice. The second year would be more, obviously. So he's not really going to gain in terms of, any kind of leverage against the team if he has a good year. I suppose he could get to the end of the year and say, well, I'm never signing a franchise contract. I don't want to play. You got to trade me or let my rights go. But, it's really interesting because it's different from Vita in that he's all in. He told his team that. We talked to, to Coach Robinson about that. They can't tell the difference when he's on the field. And if anything, he's got a bigger shoulder ship than he normally plays with. And that could be good or bad, right? He could try to do a little too much to make that money back, and he can get himself in trouble. Or it could be the best thing for the Buccaneers because they still control his rights. But, man, you're talking about a quarterback. You know what I mean? Like, that's a precious thing in the league. And we know where he came from. We know what he has done for this franchise. There's some hurt feelings, even though him and Jason Light can hug it up and have a beer. It is different in that Baker has said, I'm going forward, right? I'm not asking to be traded. I'm not going to hold out. Like, this is my football team. I want to be the quarterback that can win a Super Bowl.
And then he'll say, you know, whatever he says on the podium will be damn interesting if they get there and they hand him the Lombardi Trophy. I'll be there for that. But you know, it's really, I don't see that one changing. You know, I don't see them coming to him and Baker all of a sudden says, yeah, you know, after all, that 2 years, 100 million, whatever it was, sounds pretty good to me. And I don't see them adding a third year because I really do believe, and it's ironic, they don't want all this salary cap left over if he goes out there and gets hurt or doesn't play well, right? And he didn't play well the second half of last year. Let's not forget that. This is part of the story. Part of the story is they were 5-1, 6-2, and Baker Mayfield threw 10 touchdowns and 9 interceptions in the final games where they lost 7 out of 9. And some of those came in the fourth quarter, and some of those got them beat. And so they really are fearful that they're going to get a guy who's going to, you know, label them, you know, get a bunch of salary cap money. What's ironic is they carried a bunch of salary cap money for Tom Brady, and he still came in here and won, you know, despite them not having an opportunity to get other players in free agency. So it's sort of ironic, but here we are. And I think with Baker, the show goes on, man. He is not stopping to see how this plays out. And I don't think the Bucs are going to show up one day and say, how about a third year? What's interesting, and I'll finish on this, is that, you know, he said that the offer, I don't know if he said insulting, something along those lines.
Disrespectful.
Yeah. And all of a sudden, according to my sources, Adam Schefter saying that the organization felt disrespected by Baker. And
They did.
And that's not a good place to be with these owners and this family. And so there's going to be some feelings that have to be mended. I don't think it's going to lead to anything before the start of the season.
You know what men's offenses wins, gentlemen.
Absolutely.
We saw in 2002, Keyshawn Johnson and Warren Sapp couldn't stand each other, but yet they won 12 games together.
That's right.
Won a Super Bowl. Then when those L's started to take shape in 2003, then all of a sudden Keyshawn Johnson gets suspended and sent home and all of that. So Greg, let me ask you, with regards to how this potentially plays out, this seems like it's a real thing that the Buccaneers are kind of curious. Are you that 41 touchdown, 4,500 yard, 71.4% completion percentage guy that you were 2 years ago? Or are you closer to being the guy that doesn't hit 30 touchdowns either in 2023 or 2025? Which quarterback are we getting? Is that part of the equation too here? The fact that the Bakers had that big spike and they're kind of anxious to see, was that a one-off or can you do that again with Liam Cohen's best friend, Zach Robinson?
Yeah, that's the question because only one of those guys really is worth $50 million a year. That's the trick. And I think had this happened a year ago, had he had a year left on his contract after 4,500 yards, after 41 touchdowns and 10 wins and a division title, it's a no-brainer, you know, and he's looking at the 2 years and more. Yeah. But what he's done is he's created an uncertainty, you know. His body of work over 3 years is outstanding. Second in the NFL in touchdown passes, third in passing yards, second in interceptions as well. But because the most recent thing they saw was a collapse that nearly cost the head coach's job. You don't want to reward that immediately. And that's what he's asking them to do. He's asking them to see them for who he's been for 3 years and not who he was for the last 2 months.
But are we forgetting who he played with, Greg? I mean, no offensive line. I mean, I know he was 5-1, 6-2, but he was a guy that won those games in the final minute, even with those guys. Then you lose Mike Evans. Then you lose Chris Godwin. Now Emeka Egbuka is not. Bucky Irving's out pretty much for the year. You know, it's not as if there wasn't a reason, and he got beat the hell up. You know, got beat up because he got hit a lot.
Right. Yeah. He's the one guy that managed to stay in the game the whole way, all year long. Right. And it's not saying that the guys couldn't have. What I think is the fact that he kept playing, and this was a problem in Cleveland his last year, is that he's damaged, he's compromised physically. He wants to keep playing, but as a result, what you see on the field isn't Baker at his prime, at his best.
Yeah. Right.
So what they have to find out is if they can fix that, if they can put a healthy line in front of him, if they can have a full, healthy group of receivers. You think about last year, and you think about Sterling Shepard, how much Sterling Shepard made, like 40 catches. Sterling Shepard's not in an NFL camp right now. He's not on the roster, okay? And that's somebody that was one of the main receivers they had to go to, trying to win games. As Johnson, as a late-round rookie, stepped up amazingly well. He wouldn't be a 500-snap receiver in most circumstances.
That's right.
So you have to ask yourself, okay, if they can correct the line and get it healthy and get the receivers healthy, in theory, that should get you a lot closer to 24 Mayfield. They don't know that.
How about the play caller?
And
How
the
about the play caller?
Another thing, again, there's lots of asterisks we can put on last season to make it clear this isn't just Baker and Baker being worse. Josh Grizzard, again, you test things, you tempt fate by having a first-time play caller another time in a row, and what happens is you get more predictable, and you're not as well equipped to handle the talent inequity they had later in the season. So now, again, to work in their favor, to make you think that 26 could be more like 24, you have Zach Robinson, who's been an NFL coordinator at this level in this division, beating the Bucs in many instances.
That's right.
That should work in Baker's favor. Now, again, to ask Baker to trust that and to prove himself with these other things around him is something that he doesn't want, but probably something he's going to have to deal with in the next year here.
Yeah. Interesting fun fact. Tom Brady, when he was here, made $25 million. Baker Mayfield, who has only won one playoff game, right? And Brady took him the whole way and got that Lombardi. He's going to be getting twice what Tom Brady made. That's just kind of mind-boggling to think about. Kind of like the rain that we've been having in Tampa. It's supposed to be the Sunshine State, fellas. What the hell? I've never seen the Bucs practice in a monsoon like they did the other day on Monday, right? They spent the first 35 minutes outside in a torrential downpour. Then they finally went inside. I know Todd Bowles doesn't want to go inside 3 days in a row, but they're going to do that because they have the night practice indoors tonight. But so that was a little bit of a surprise, right? The fact that it's rained so much. Maybe it's a good thing. This team had two absolute torrential downpour games last year in the Saints game and the Carolina game here in Tampa. Lost one, almost lost the other one, but maybe it's a good thing. But what are your big surprises in training camp so far? We're about a week into it now. So what's your biggest takeaway, Rick, from training camp that maybe has surprised you a little bit?
Well, you never know how somebody's going to come back from an injury, right? And particularly a guy that didn't take a snap in the National Football League. But, man, Walker has looked tremendous in this training camp. And I think, for him to come back, I think he had – and who keeps these stats? Scott and those guys keep these stats, right? But for him to have a sack in all 5 practices, right, albeit, in team play, he's going to play with that left knee brace. It looks cumbersome. But he has a great attitude. He says he has the same quick twitch, and we know he has bend and those things. And he's a different type of body. He's also a guy. When you talk about Vita Vea being out, that can play a little bit inside as well as on the edge. So, but they were so high on him. Central Arkansas, 2-time FBS Defensive Player of the Year. It's just great to see somebody, and he had a full year because it was the 3rd practice. I think he got hurt a year ago. To get back, and boy, does he look like he could really provide some real depth for them on the edge and maybe someplace else.
Yeah, they're super excited about him, Greg. We do the Pewter Report Camp Diary series with him. We started it last year. It only lasted 1 episode. Then he got hurt, as you mentioned, Rick. The 3rd practice, right before they got to pads. Yeah, so we're doing it again this year to make up for that. He's been a willing participant. We're glad that he has the second opportunity. We're glad to see him actually get to full pads this time. Yeah. And one of the things that he told us at Pewter Report was, it's kind of interesting how Ruben Bain and I are kind of the same body type. He's about an inch taller. Yeah, David's 6'1", Bain's 6'2". They're both about 260 pounds. And you kind of see the freakish bend that David Walker has. It's akin to Ruben Bain. Now, he's a 4th round pick compared to Bain, who played, at a team that went all the way to the national championship game at Miami last year. But Walker has been impressive, and he's probably not the starter that you necessarily want. But you know what? He's probably going to be better than Hassan Reddick was last year at age 31, and he's cooked. I'm hearing some whispers that if he's as good as advertised when training camp gets into this preseason games, so we'll talk about the Jets coming up on deck next week. If he flashes in these preseason games, he could get from that 3rd string where he's running with Chris Braswell right now, Greg, all the way up to the 2nd string where he's either replacing Anthony Nelson or Aquadim Muhammad in that lineup with that second hockey shift that, like, Todd Bowles likes to run. He gets Yaya Diaby and Ruben Bain, then he brings in the next line shift and then the next line shift. I think the arrow's pointing up for David Walker.
Oh, yeah, and he doesn't have to be a huge player for them. He can be a third down, a nickel rusher, a specialist, if you will. They've got Bain and Diaby to take the bulk of the snaps at this position. So what you want is to have guys that can come in and there's not drop-off. Let's say he gets 15, 20 snaps a game, which, again, is probably a little bit less than Muhammad will get. Yeah. But if he's your fourth edge rusher and he's productive, okay, plays on special teams, that's a huge win. You know, I think we've had a year of wondering if he could get back to the excitement they had a summer ago, because in the time just as you were finding out who he was gone a year ago. Right. And now the two things that stand out to me is that you don't notice that he's injured. Yeah. And no one even remembers that he's a small school guy, that this is Southern Arkansas and Central Arkansas. And he hasn't played at anything close to the NFL level. When you watch him in practice, he fits in. He looks like the rest of the guys. There's a burst. There's an explosiveness. There's an excitement about him. Yeah. Again, if he had 5 sacks as a rookie in a part-time role, that's a huge win for a fourth-round pick off a major injury. Huge.
Yeah. So the thing about David Walker that's interesting, we're going to get into your surprise of Bucs camp here in just a second, but David Walker at 6'1", 260 pounds can literally do a backflip.
Yes,
a backflip. So when you see Tez Johnson do his backflips, he's about $155, right? And we're all kind of like amazed at his aerial acrobatics, but David Walker weighs about 100 pounds more, and he can do it. But this guy, he has done some. He did a backflip the other day after he caught a touchdown, and he's really putting on a show in training camp. Is he not?
Yeah. Absolutely. And the backflip's crazy. Like, they had the World Cup highlights, and I think he did his in celebrating after his fake World Cup goal on video this summer. And everyone's like, wow, I guess that knee's okay if he's doing backflips on his knee. The other guy that was that big, and I remember seeing do backflips when he was in college, was Jason Pierre-Paul. And again, by no means is he JPP. Does he need to be JPP in his career? But it speaks to athleticism, freakish explosiveness, to not care how big your body is, and to have the confidence to pull it off. Again, I think the fact that he's doing backflips says he feels pretty good about where the knee is. He's somebody that I think we're going to see play in preseason, and that's his first chance to kind of validate all the behind-the-scenes excitement for who he is.
Yeah. And Tez Johnson, I mean, he really has caught your attention, everybody's attention, really. And Greg is in a situation where it's like, you look at the depth chart, and last year he was wide receiver 5, right? You had Mike, you had Chris, you had Jalen, you had Emeka Ibuka, who was the first-round pick. He was really wide receiver 4. And then you had Tez Johnson. And there were plenty of games where Emeka Ibuka was wide receiver 1 and Tez Johnson was wide receiver number 2. He actually had 5 touchdowns last year, which was the same amount of touchdowns that Mike and Chris had combined. That's not bad for a 5th-round pick, but he's kind of picking up where he left off. Oh, and by the way, he's wide receiver 5 again on the depth chart, right behind Chris and Emeka Ibuka and Jalen McMillan and now Ted Hurst. And now you've got Tez Johnson back at number 5, but he's kind of saying, hey, Zach Robinson, don't forget about me.
Right. And what Tez Johnson does, and what the depth of his receivers do, it's crazy to think about, because you think about losing Mike Evans and taking the head off the beast, if you will. And it's impossible to think, wow, could they be better in a year where they don't have Mike Evans? And I really think as a group, as a position group, they really could. It seems odd to think about, but Mike Evans only had 3 touchdowns last year. He only played 8 games. So they already kind of had life without Mike Evans for about half of last season. Nobody wants that. No one chooses that. But I do think as a result of that last year, you see Tez Johnson play so much more and be so much more prepared than he would be if everyone was healthy. If everyone's healthy, he's barely dressing as a rookie last year. So I think he's better for it. And then you think about just the depth. Obviously, Chris Godwin is the known commodity. He's the leader. He's the veteran. Right. He's the $20 million receiver that's back. The next 4 are all 24 years old or younger. Okay, this is a really young group, which means they're all on rookie contracts. They're all inexpensive, and they're all growing and learning together. So in Ibuka, in McMillan, in Tez, and now in Ted Hurst as well. I just think there's a lot of upside to the group. Tez is the one that probably has surprised us the most. He had one practice last week where he had 2 within a minute of each other, 2 back of the end zone toe tap touchdown, and then caught maybe the nicest ball that Baker's thrown in camp so far. It's just a deep ball between 2 defenders that he went for a long touchdown on. So again, you don't even know how Tez fits into this offense right now. If everybody's healthy, he's at best the 4th receiver probably. But I do think he's a guy that they know they can bring in, again, 10, 15 snaps a game, test that defense downfield. Baker likes to throw the deep ball. He's certainly connected with Tez last year. The depth of this receiver group is what has people thinking that they can weather moving on without Mike Evans.
Yeah. And Rick, Greg mentions Chris Godwin, and maybe that's a little bonus surprise because he looks like he didn't really suffer a fractured ankle. He's out there catching passes from Baker Mayfield, just doing Chris Godwin things, securing the catch, moving the chains, picking up yards, just looking like kind of the old Chris Godwin out there. And one of the things too that I noticed was out there in that monsoon that they were trying to practice in the other day, you saw wide receivers dropping passes left and right. Chris Godwin was not dropping anything, even the wet balls.
Yeah, I've said this before, but I'll say it again. If there was a guy, if I was in a street fight and I had to pick a Buccaneer, there's a lot of big men you might want to choose, right, to protect you. I think the toughest guy on this football team really is Chris Godwin. What he's been through, not once but twice in his career, 3 knee ligaments, came back, the dislocated ankle. It's incredible what he's done. Excuse me. And I don't know that he'll have, a ton of catches. I know he'll do the dirty work, and I know he'll lead this group in his way. He doesn't have an ego about him. 10 years in the league. It's hard to believe this is his 10th season. But he's going to show up on third down. And the one thing about Baker that I talked to him about, Chris, he goes, at any point, I can just put the ball on him. Yeah. And I'm convinced that no one else is going to get it, right? He's either going to catch it or no one else. He will completely, make himself available to me on third down, on big downs. And I think that's the trust he's established. And for the first time in a couple of years now, he wasn't rehabbing. He was just getting ready for the season. And I think there's a big difference in those two things. And so, I look for Chris to be Chris again, at least to start the year. And we hope that he can play all, 17 games.
Speaking of starting the year, Prize Picks already has some lineups ready to go for week 1. Greg, let's give this a There we are. There we are, gentlemen. Let's take a look at this week's lineup here from Prize Picks.
Yeah, you already look ahead to week 1. It's distant future, but you can look at it right now. You think about the 2 quarterbacks in this game. A lot of season over-unders. This is a game 1 over-under. The number for Baker Mayfield is 248.5 yards. How many can he pass for? Ibuka's got his own line there as well. You think about how good Emeka Ibuka was at the start of last season, week 1, coming in, jumping right in the NFL. His line is 59.5 yards. If you want to mess around with the Bengals, if you think you know Cincinnati, you want to know how many catches Chase Brown's going to have, you can jump on that too. But this gives you a chance, individual over-unders. Within a single game, you don't have to worry as much about injuries, whether somebody's healthy. It's just on that day, what are they good for? And again, week 1, that Bengals defense is a historically bad defense. I think they'll be better this year, adding Dexter Lawrence, adding some of the pieces they have. I don't know how well that'll take in week 1. So I think most Bucs fans think of that as a week where this offense can show where it's going to be. The Bengals had multiple games last year where they scored like 37, 38 points and lost. If there's an over-under for the total points in that game, that's probably a popular line as well.
America's #1 sports picks app. It's super easy to use. You're basically just picking a lineup with a couple of players, and you're picking more or less in those lineups. Prize Picks has got a great promotion going on right now. New users play $5, get $150 in bonus lineups if you win. Use promo code HMA to activate that. And I'm looking forward already to seeing exactly what type of damage Baker Mayfield can do against the Cincinnati Bengals and that defense. So we're looking forward to that. Let me get we're back on the screen. We're looking forward to seeing more of these rookies too. And Jason Light has just done a tremendous job in his scouting staff of just finding 4 starters each year on average since the 2023 draft, pretty much 2022, maybe even going back to Rachaad White and Kate Otten in that year. It's just been remarkable. And Jason Light has, there was a time when he couldn't buy a 3rd round pick. He couldn't make one of those picks happen. You had Quan Alexander, and that was pretty much it. Now This guy's hitting on Zion McCollum in the 5th round. He's hitting on Tez Johnson in the 7th round. He's hitting on Bucky Irving and Kate Otten in the 4th round. David Walker, maybe. The day 2 picks have largely been hits. He's finding gems in the 3rd round, Tyke Smith, Jalen McMillan, etc. Maybe he's got another one, Ted Hurst, this year. But really, there's a headliner this year, and it's Ruben Bain. And this guy, Greg, has really put on a show so far. We saw the power during the rookie minicamp and the OTAs hitting the sled. Now he's got full pads on. He's hitting Luke Gedeke, and he's been impressive. He looks like he belongs in the NFL.
Yeah, it was neat. They put out, obviously they have odds on everything these days, but odds for defensive rookie in the NFL. One of the online sites literally has Ruben Bain as the favorite now to win defensive rookie of the year, which is crazy when you think that he went 15th overall. David Bailey, again, high draft pick. Arvell Reese, Sonny Styles, Caleb Downs. All these guys have longer odds than Ruben Bain. And I think part of that is just the way that he's been accepted here. The excitement for him hasn't faded. We've yet to have that day where it's like, wow, it just didn't look good today. He validates the optimism they have about him every time we see him. This was neat. It's like just to see the personality of him starting to come out like this. Yeah. We had the indoor practice 2 days ago. There's at least 50 people wearing number 3 Tampa Bay jerseys. Yeah. The friends and family.
All his relatives.
Yeah. All friends and family. He could have filled a section all by himself.
That's right.
Really neat to see them. Old people, kids and nephews. The following he has just in his own family strong. But then you look out in the crowd, there's people that have Bain jerseys now already, that have number 3 jerseys as fans. There's an excitement. I don't know when we had a rookie come to Tampa here that had the excitement and the high level of expect. Even though it's 15th overall, this isn't. Yeah. Kevin White was a number 5 overall pick. There was certainly excitement with him, but it's been a while.
Maybe Jameis Winston for the Florida State fans. Maybe, but he's a quarterback. This is different. This is a different position rather than your face of the franchise. And I totally get that. And Rick, when you look at Ruben Bain and what he's able to do out there, I think the one thing that really impresses Todd Bowles, who loves those heady players, is the football IQ. It's the fact that he's not out there swimming and thinking about things. And, I love one of your famous sayings, greatness shows up early in players. And like the exact opposite of that would be someone like, say, Chris Braswell, right? Who is basically a 2nd-round bust. He's quickly sliding down the depth chart, and 1.5 sacks during his rookie season, 1 sack last year. At no point in time has he really wowed us in training camp or the preseason, but that's not been the case with Ruben Bain. He has wowed us kind of on the regular with not just what he's doing against offensive tackles and tight ends, but just everything else. He's got a super serious demeanor. He sprints from drill to drill. He's all about ball. He's not, cutting up and clowning with the players. He's all business.
Yeah, well, I'm glad there's no hype about him. I worry that a guy like that might find those expectations a little big, but that's not Bain. That's just not his mentality. I think he embraces it, and he's obviously, those Miami guys. When you're raised there, football isn't. It's a little more than just a game to them. I mean, it's really a mentality, and he embraces that, and I think that he's humble enough to really want to learn from other guys, from the veterans. Him and Yaya Diaby, who hosted him at Louisville way back in the day, have formed a really fast friendship. And, oh, by the way, no one's more important to Yaya Diaby and his financial future than Ruben Bain, because all of a sudden Yaya Diaby won't have a tight end on that side, won't be getting chipped. They can go try to get, the other guy, number 3 over there, and let him try to run free. So he instantly makes this defense better. He's a dude. He's a difference maker. And yes, I don't think it's a stretch to say, and I'm not a betting man. I saw those odds and I went, whoa, number 1. But I think you say that about players like him. Defensive rookie of the year is attainable if he can stay healthy. But he's going to play. He's going to have some rough days too.
Yeah, there's no doubt.
Play against some grown ass men that that weren't on Indiana's football team in the national championship. So that's right. I just think that the other thing is his age, right? I mean, these guys are young. And let's not forget about Josiah Trotter, too, because that dude, when they put the pads on, hello, football player.
Yes.
Hello, guy running downhill through gaps and thumping people backwards. Like, that's what you want to see from those two guys who are going to be foundational players for this defense. They're not sapping Brooks yet, Scott. We're not going to do that yet. But those positions, as you know, and one, he's not sapped because he played inside. But when you can get someone at that level, at every level of your defense, to play that way and have them for years to come, it's exciting.
I think one of the things too, when you look at Ruben Bain is we talk about Baker Mayfield having a chip. And I think this guy probably wakes up every day saying, I can't believe I was the 15th pick in this draft. I just think he's going to make the NFL pay for making him wait and have to snatch that hat, and become a Tampa Bay Buccaneer, much to the Buccaneers' liking, of course, with that. You mentioned Josiah Trotter. And boy, did he show up when the full pads came on, right? I mean, 3 tackles for loss from what we counted at Pure Report, including 2 tackles for loss of back-to-back plays. He literally punched and jolted Justin School, took him to school, and just basically erased him and went in the backfield and made a play. The power that you see there it's something. I mean, he's a bigger linebacker. And really, when you look at the linebacking core, we'll throw Alex Anzalone, who's 6'3", 234, and Christian Roseboom, who's 6'3", about 234 pounds as well. This is not Servassier Dennis, and company. These are some big dudes. And I know that Todd Bowles wanted to get a lot bigger along the defensive line, and he's done that. There are some absolute monsters. You see here Elijah Simmons and Jason Jones with Vita Vea, just to kind of give you an idea of how big we're talking here. And, of course, DeMonte Capehart is a big defensive tackle as well. But the linebacking core has got noticeably bigger too. And with Josiah Trotter, Greg, I think the big thing that we're looking to see is the coverage ability, because that was a little suspect at Missouri. Now, keep in mind, he was a starter as a true freshman at West Virginia and then went to Missouri in his sophomore season. So 2 schools, back-to-back years. You got to learn another system. You're a young player. But I'm curious to see Trotter in pass coverage. What are your thoughts on where he is in terms of his development? I love the fact that when you put him in drive, he gets downhill. But how can he play in reverse? That remains to be seen.
Yeah, I remember that was the right after the draft. That was the big question: is did they get another linebacker with coverage issues? And I reached out and talked to their defensive coordinator that he had in Missouri, and he made a point to say, if you watch his tape from last year, this is a linebacker who's in a new program and a new defense, and that whole defense needed about a month to find itself. But he said if you watched, I think he said Kentucky was the 4th game, and if you watched his tape from then on, from week 5, week 6 on, just a different player, understood the defense, understood the coverage responsibilities, and he said it was flipping a switch. So I get why it's a concern, because there's some bad tape from the first month of last year. But Nicholson said that wasn't a problem in the second half of last season. And I think Todd Bowles has spoken to how well he's handled that part of it already. This is something they knew was a problem. Alex Anzalone, I think they probably thought was one of the best coverage linebackers of the free agents available. You'll see him now, even we were watching in goal line, where, again, they put Cade Otton out in the slot. We have a big guy in the slot. He was comfortable stepping out and handling him one-on-one in coverage. I think there's a lot of room to grow from where they were last year. As much as we talked about Levante David and we talked about Servassier Dennis a year ago, linebacker is probably the position where they can be the most improved. Not because of injuries, just because of changing everything they have there and addressing some major concerns that were deficiencies in the middle of this defense.
And if they can stop the run, which I think they will do with the front 7, that allows Antoine Winfield Jr. now to be that chess piece, right? Allows him to come down and be that free rusher and do some things inside, the tackle box, as opposed to just being the literal deep center fielder.
And it allows Todd Bowles to really get in his bag too, just as a defensive play caller, right? I mean, he lives for 3rd and long rather than 3rd and medium or 3rd and short. It seems to me that Ted Hurst, after a really promising offseason, He's maybe, I don't say taking a step back, but he's kind of slowed down a little bit. He hasn't stood out as much this first week of training camp. We'll see how he progresses and kind of readjusts and recalibrates a little bit. But let's talk about another draft pick from Miami, Keontae Scott, who really, I think, has opened some eyes because he's not just playing in the slot. He's seeing some time at safety. He's cross-training at corner and doing it well. Here you see him with Zion McCollum. McCollum has had a very good start to training camp too. 2 interceptions already. Seems more confident. But when you look at the depth chart, we have yet to see Benjamin Morrison. Jacob Parrish is, I think, probably entrenched as the number 2 cornerback right now. But the fact that Keontae Scott, Rick, has looked credible outside, and we saw on the last play of practice the other day, going stride for stride with a guy with 4.3 speed himself and Eric Rivers, breaking up a Jake Browning pass to end practice. That was a pretty impressive play. This game does not look too big for him, does it? And if he's more than just a slot, if he can be a guy that can kind of flip outside too, like Jacob Parrish did last year, maybe alleviates a little bit of the worry about the depth chart at cornerback if Benjamin Morrison's hamstrings don't cooperate.
Yeah, because right now I still think that this team could use another veteran corner that has played, that could come in here and give them that depth, because you don't know what you're going to get from Benjamin Morrison if Jacob Parrish goes down or he's not as effective outside. But Keontae Scott he's just a football player. Now, it's a lot to put on a guy who's played as a rookie to say, we're going to cross-train you, teach you the nickel, also go play outside. But again, his football IQ is pretty high. He's athletic. I think people are going to miss the fact that no matter what, this guy's going to get you 5 or 6 sacks this year, and somebody's going to go, "Why did this guy last as long as he did in the draft?" You know, because he's going to torment some teams if that's just all he does. And we know he's got ball skills. So yeah, again, Miami kid, not afraid. He's up here to play. He's not up here just to be in the NFL. And he's flashing right away.
Greg, when you look at Keontae Scott, Todd Bowles likes fast cornerbacks. He said that, right? And that's one of the key things he looks for. And it's not just covering guys that are fast down the field. When he gets those blitz calls from the slot, and we've seen it with Tyke Smith and Antoine Winfield Jr. in the slot. We saw Jacob Parrish have a couple sacks last year as the nickel from the slot. We're talking guys that are in the 4.3, 4.4 range, and this is probably the fastest of those 4 I mentioned in Keontae Scott. That's another way that Todd Bowles likes to use cornerback speed, is going at the quarterback, not just covering receivers down the field.
Yeah, and they're definitely, this rookie class has blitzers. I mean, you talk about Keontae Scott, you talk about Josiah Trotter. Both of them will be utilized rushing the passer. I mean, I think we get excited about Bain and what he can do, but in terms of sacks from rookies, again, it's one of those where David Walker's not a rookie, but he's essentially a rookie, first-year player. All 4 of those could have 4 or more sacks, and it wouldn't surprise me this year. And I think, again, if they're more stout against the run, it's going to open up so much for Bowles to, again, bring Winfield in. Winfield, I think, spent so much of last season covering for other problems on the back half of the defense. And if he doesn't have to do that, if he can freelance, like you said, Tyke Smith, another guy that they'll blitz Tyke as well. I don't think Bowles reaches into the bag of tricks as often when he's compromised in terms of the 11 he has on the field. But if they can stay healthy on defense, it's a big if. I think it opens his creativity. It lets him do things that he probably is hesitant to do with backups here and there, especially at corner. But no, Keontae's got to see him. There was a play. You see how much he cares already in that, again, like they're not even in pads. He got beat on a sideline throw, maybe an 8-yard pass, and like kept running, ran into the wall in the indoor and punched the wall because he's angry. And if he's that angry, I think it's probably July at this point. It's not even August. It's just neat to see how much he cares, how much he wants to pick things up in a hurry.
Speaking of rookie corners, one of the guys that's really stood out, and he's been a bit of a surprise, is Aiden Garnes, who's got some run with the first team. He's an undrafted free agent from Arizona, had a tremendous practice in the first day of pads, got his first interception off Baker Mayfield in one-on-ones. I asked him, does that count if it's not in team? He's like, I'm going to count it. It's one-on-ones. That's my first interception. I'll take it. But then also made a Studley goal line tackle at the 2-yard line, taking Ted Hurst to the ground. Ted Hurst is 6'4", 200 pounds, Aiden Garnes is 5'11", 180 pounds, kind of Rondé Barber-esque size. Just took him right to the ground, showed a lot of physicality. He's a player, and you can kind of see it with Pepe Williams, getting rotated in with Jacob Parrish being out the other day. They did a little Josh Hayes, probably much to fans' chagrin. But then also Aiden Garnes was in that rotation too, getting some first-round reps. He's been a guy, Rick, that has stood out as a pleasant surprise.
Yeah, no doubt. And that's what you want to do if you're a player like that, to get on the radar pretty fast when you get those reps. You're not going to get as many as some other guys, but the other day they had Parrish out, Morrison was out. So that's where you have to step up. You mentioned Pepe. I thought he was terrific the other day. He made a bunch of plays, and he's a guy that joined them late last year and spent the whole year pretty much on the practice squad, but now he's absorbed the defense and he's getting his opportunity. So those are great stories, and that's what if we go in these preseason games and they get practices up with the Jets, and you're not going to see the starters and that sort of thing. But if you're an NFL fan and you're a Bucs fan, you pay attention to those guys that are playing, because this is their dream and this is their chance to go out there and make some plays when the lights come on, see if it's too big for them or not. And I think both those guys are going to be really fun to watch in the preseason.
Yeah, and
when you look at, I was going to say real quick, when you look at Keontae Scott and Aiden Garnes and Pepe Williams, this team might stay pat at cornerback, much to our chagrin a little bit here. Right. But the thing is when you're looking at who's available, it's basically guys that are 30 years of age or older, 31, 32. Right. Do they want to come in and be cornerback 4 because this team already likes Jacob Parrish, Zion McCollum, Keontae Scott at least, and we'll see if Benjamin Morrison's even available, right? But if he is, now you're looking at bringing in a veteran to play that cornerback 4, cornerback 5 role. That means you got to play special teams. How effective is a 31, 32-year-old guy going to be in special teams? What do you make of the Bucs cornerback position and how these guys possibly fit in?
Yeah, I think right now, the Bucs have conceded there's just not a lot out there to add that would help. Like you said, you have to find somebody who's humble enough to want to make their main contribution be on special teams, to know that they're not going to get on the field defensively unless there's an injury. And that eliminates a lot of the guys that are out there right now. Again, I think they'll definitely be watching. I think if you find a team that's loaded at corner that has to make cuts when they actually cut to 53, that's probably the first position I think the Bucs will be scouring the waiver wire for.
I agree.
Wanting someone just with, again, somewhere in between, has starting experience, has played in the league, but can help them on teams. Because your 4th and your 5th corner, again, Josh Hayes, as much as people don't like to see him on the field defensively, has been a really consistent special teams player for them. And that's why it's hard to take him off the roster. That's what that competition will be, though, is them saying, okay, can Aiden Garnes play special teams? Can Demarion Williams, can Pepe Williams help on teams enough to make a change from something that's a known commodity? Maybe it helps that Danny Smith is a new special teams coordinator. He doesn't know Josh as well as if they had the same guy back. So I think what it does is it creates competition where now you have probably 3, maybe even 4 corners that are competing for that. If you keep 4 outside corners, I don't know how many they'll keep because they're going to have multiple nickels and they'll have 4 safeties as well. But I do think it's a real competition. It's one that you get to see play out in the second half of preseason games, because those guys now have to show themselves on defense. They're not lining up against A-list NFL competition at receiver, but if you can be the guy that comes up with a pick and shows you can dominate that lesser competition, it might help you keep a job.
Bucs fans, help us spread the word about Bucs Collective here on YouTube. Let your friends know about us. Hit the subscribe button. Become one of our almost 1,000 subscribers. We'd love to hit that number tonight. So make sure you hit subscribe. Also hit like and leave a comment too. We'd love to hear some feedback from the show. We got the audio issues fixed. We called the audible, and everything is hunky dory. Rick, let's end the show because we have another training camp practice to get to. It's a night practice here, but you know what? The Buccaneers are going to be playing next week, a night game as the preseason starts. They're heading up to the Jets to take on the Aaron Glenn boys. What are your thoughts on how these two joint practices could go, and what do you want to see from this Buccaneer team as they head up to New York to play the Jets, but also practice against them twice?
Well, the last time we were up there, Aaron Rodgers had just joined the team, and he lasted all about 4 plays that season. But there's a lot of hype. It's New York. There won't be any shortage of media out there, and I'm sure they'll all be wanting to talk to Baker Mayfield. And I don't know if Vita Vea is going to be on that airplane, but look, in these things, the good thing about this work is that you can put your teams in certain situations that they script that you might not get during a game. It's supposedly limited or some contact, but hopefully not to the extent that guys are going to be taken to the ground. And so you can control some injuries that way. But I think this is important work. I remember last year, I thought that the Bucs went up and dominated the Pittsburgh Steelers in their practices, so much so that Todd Bowles called and said, "Hey, I misspoke. I said that Baker would play. I'm not going to play him. I just watched the tape, and he was so good that we don't have any reason to play him." And so, unfortunately, though, you get into the game, and that's where Jalen McMillan, got the hospital ball from Teddy Bridgewater and ended up fracturing his neck and missed all but 3 games. And so those things can happen. They have a lot of depth at receiver. We're going to see some of those guys, you got to play somebody, right?
Right.
And so somebody's going to play. And I just think that, you want to see this defense show up. We talked about the size. You want to see them stop the run against the Jets and just do those things and start to form their personality. I think when you get these guys on the road for an extended period, it's a really good bonding time. We don't go away for training camp. They're at home. So this is a chance for them to become a team.
Greg, when you look at last year's game in week 3 between the Jets and the Bucs, a lot closer than people expected. The Jets had a lead late in that game thanks to a blocked field goal for a touchdown. Hopefully Danny Smith can get all those things corrected. I'm already a huge Danny Smith fan. My gosh, what an absolute marvel he is. Us old timers, we remember Rod Marinelli, who was like the guru in the league for defensive line play. He was like the best defensive line coach there was. I get that impression with Danny Smith. He's practicing onside kicks for like 8 to 10 minutes. It was just crazy. But your thoughts on, is there going to be any carryover from that kind of heated game that was so back and forth between the Jets and the Buccaneers in practice? Are we going to see some spirited play and maybe a fight or two with Ashawn Robinson getting involved?
I think it's definitely, it's the first chance to really let off steam as a player. They, at this point, we get up there, it'll be 3 weeks going up against the same guys. They get tired of it. So I fully expect something. They'll lay down the law. Bowles is usually like a no fight guy. And if you get to a fight, you're off the field, you're done. But no, there's always a little hostility there, a little chippiness. Wouldn't surprise me. It's cool. And then we talk about Reuben Bay. I mean, David Bailey, again, is the first edge taken in this draft. You get to see both of them, obviously in kind of a restrained, carefully crafted situation for practice there, but to appreciate the two of them, and the choices both teams made to get the rookie edge rushers they got. Wish I was up there. Jealous of Rick going up there for it. It should be a fun one. I do want to share an update, just a live in-game update here if we can. We hit 1K subscribers.
Yeah, there we go. Thank you,
Thank
Bucs
you guys
fans.
very much
Appreciate
for jumping on and subscribing. That's just the first 1,000, but it's really cool to hit that just after 2 shows.
Absolutely. And speaking of shows, we're back to our regularly scheduled time at 7 o'clock next Tuesday night. And we're going to be doing this all season long and even to the off season too. So Tuesdays at 7 o'clock. Make sure you hit subscribe at Bucs Collective here on YouTube. Also, make sure to hit the like button as well as leave a comment. We love reading those comments. And you can also find us on Spotify as well if you want the audio version of this podcast. So we have a night practice to get out to, gentlemen. We're going to wrap up the show. Thank you all for joining us here. For Rick Stroud of the Tampa Bay Times, Greg Auman from Fox Sports, I'm Scott Reynolds from Pewter Report, and we'll say good night from the Bucs Collective.